Hi, I'm Connel, the hair art director for Davines, and here again on a Monday evening. And I'm going to be doing a little look from the combination cutting series. Each week I've been demonstrating using a combination of hair cutting with razor and hair cutting with scissors, and this week is going to be the same. This week is going to be a stronger, more conceptual shape, but I still think there's still techniques in here, if not the overall haircut, that can be directly used back into the salon. So what I'm going to do, I've sectioned off just behind the ear. In fact, it's actually just on top of the ear on this haircut, which will become clear later. But I'm going to begin through the side and the front, and then go through into the back afterwards. This haircut's it's called, we had a bit of fun with the name. The name of the haircut is 4 Lines Walking to a Bob. And the reason it is that is because this haircut is going to be based around 4 lines. It's going to be based around the line of the fringe, which is then going to step into a line through the side, which is then going to drop straight down in a line, and then there's going to be a disconnected line through the back. So it's essentially a bob shape, but with 4 lines all the way through it. And where the idea came from for it was, you know, I'm at self-isolation at home, which I'm sure most of you guys watching are the same. And I was looking around and you know, sometimes you can get too in-depth looking at really abstract inspirations and miss what's right in front of your face. My wife works for Condé Nast, and she has a lot of the Condé Nast titles here, and she has a huge collection of Vogue magazines, and I saw this front cover of Vogue, and what I liked about it, and obviously it's the angle of the model's chin that's making the bob go off on this angle, but what I liked was that there was this line, and then what appeared to be, even though it wasn't, a slightly disconnected another step through there. And that's the first thing that got me along the lines of thinking, okay, let's create a bob shape using a combination of scissor and razor, but let's do it in some steps, and let's do it in a slightly more original way. So I'm going to get going. I'm going to get cutting. First section, I'm going to split the fringe through here, and I'm going to take a diagonal line and then clip that out of the way. If there's any questions, I'm going to try and look through the feed and answer any of your questions, but if I don't get to them, I'll make sure I go into the comment section and answer them afterwards. So I've taken a diagonal line. The reason I'm doing this is because I want the hair to kick forward, and I always feel like if I work on a diagonal, the hair wants to naturally jump forward, and that's what I want. With all these haircuts, I'm letting them dry naturally, so that's what I'm going to do with this. So I want a line that's sitting beneath, when it kicks, is beneath the nose and the lips. So I'm using my razor and I'm judging. If I cut it too short, when it kicks, it's going to be up here, and if I cut it too long, it's when it kicks, it'll be too long. So I'm going to judge that my line with the razor is going to go about here. And I'm going to start working up in diagonal sections towards the front. The reason that I'm working in diagonal sections like this is because it's going to make it easier for my fringe length. Sorry, making sure that I'm not rounding up. Because it's going to make it easier for me to connect into my fringe length. And I don't really like separating things off too much. I like everything to flow together. So I find if I isolate my fringes and then separate from the side, there always looks like a separation with them, which is not really what I want to create. So I'm cutting a square line, and this is one of the few times that I would do this, where I'm cutting a square line, but with a diagonal section. And I would always say that if whatever line I'm cutting, my section mirrors that, but because I want this to kick, I don't want it to sit as like a really kind of clean line, because the look I'm going for, I want it all to kind of have these little delicate kicks here, quite a heavy fringe. So I'm almost doing like making the angle of the section and the line that I'm cutting fight against each other, in the hope that it starts to do this little thing here, which if you see through there is what it's doing. I'm going to work up into the side quite deeply because I want my fringe to be very enclosed. I don't want a wide fringe, I want it to almost look too tight. I want the length at the side to really frame and start to flick around. Just going to find my guide from the underneath. The good thing about using a razor on haircuts like this is because I want it to kick, you can see I'm working about 1 centimetre from the end. So when I'm working about 1 centimetre from the end, straight away I'm creating almost like a very, very shallow layer through the bottom. And when I add a little bit, I'm going to use the Davines volume mist as I go. Just to help this little kick that I want to create as I'm drying. All these haircuts are being dried naturally, so I'll post the finished result in the feed afterwards. You can see straight away I'm starting to get this little cuteness through here. I'll spin back around so we can come in. So it really is, for anyone that's just joining, I'm just going to do a brief recap on what I'm doing. This haircut is called 4 Lines Walk Into a Bob. And we had a bit of fun with the name, but basically the reason behind that name is because there's this haircut's based around 4 lines, so there's going to be a line on either side, a line that drops into the back, a line across the back, and then the fringe. And none of it is going to be connected. It's going to have 4 totally separate lines. And what I'm enjoying doing on these Monday evenings in this combination cutting is showing the benefit of the razor, showing the benefit of using the razor with scissors, but also showing that how using a razor, you can still do strong conceptual shapes, but they can still have like a cuteness and a wearability to them. They don't have to be, really, really severe and, just because you're doing something a little bit stronger, no one could wear it on the street, where it's just for a photograph or a show. And I want to kind of move away from that myth, really. Right, so I'm going to switch now to my scissors, because I've got this line that's just kicking through here, as you can see. I'm going to start to work on a diagonal through the fringe also. I want the fringe again to sit really, really heavy and really chunky. So section off with the wide teeth of the comb. And I'm going to look, as I said earlier, can you see where the short line is coming right to the corner of the eye? Because I want it to almost be too shallow. I want her face to be really kind of enclosed in. I'm just going to spin around so you guys can see. I'm going to start to cut the line. I'm going to leave this a little bit longer than I want, because all these haircuts are going to dry naturally. So I do want to leave myself some drying room. I'm going to come under here. And I'm just going to work to the centre. I'm going to take a parallel diagonal section working towards the middle. So with the fringe, I'm going in with the scissors underneath, lifting away from the head, trapping it between the comb and the scissor, and then just using the tension of my comb to get that in. See what I'm liking now? Can you see if I move closer? To anyone that was watching right from the beginning, I was saying I wanted to start to get these little kicks, and here I want this kind of to sit out here, to sit out here. So then, as I cut this line longer through the back, we've got these real kind of strong shapes and strong lines. There's nothing weak about the haircut. I'm just going to work to the centre of the head again. Okay, scissor underneath the section, drop it down, just work into the centre of the head. And then I'm going to comb it naturally from the crown. You can see that I didn't section off this front at all, there's no real parting, I'm just letting it all fall from the centre. I'm going to put some texture through the top at the end anyway, so it doesn't really, the parting isn't so consequential. If I misses any questions, guys, I will make sure that I get on the comments feed and say. So someone asked, hello, who are you? Recap, please. Okay, recap. I'm creating a bob that has 4 lines in it. I'm going to be creating a line through the side, a line through the fringe, a step line into the back, and then a solid line through there, so that there's no connection in it. It's 4 strong lines using a combination of razor and scissor work to give a shape that on the face of it is quite conceptual and say like it's not so wearable, but the way we're going to do it, it's going to have a cuteness, it's going to be dried naturally, and it's going to show how shapes like this, when approached in the right way, can be really nice. I think someone asked about the tight teeth on the comb. The reason I've got the tight teeth on the comb is because I want the fringe to, you see all this thing that's happening? I want to almost like a contraction, so as I cut the fringe, I cut it longer than what I wanted it, because then with the tight teeth then it's going to contract a little bit and then all start to move, and that's, because nothing's being wrap dried either, I wanted like a contraction. I didn't want to just comb it, cut it and then it just stays where it is. I want it to contract and start to get all these nice little things here. And for anyone that's just joining now, I was walking around the house and my wife works for Connel and she has a huge collection of Vogue magazines, and there was this front cover, and this was the initial thought process. When I saw the front cover I was like, okay, this is because of the angle of the model's head, but there's something quite nice in here that there's a line and then what appears to be, which it isn't, but it appears to be another disconnected line. And I thought, okay, that was the first step on me thinking about, let's do a bob shape that's totally disconnected from each other. Right, I'm going to go through and repeat through this side, and I'm going to go quite fast so that you guys don't get bored. I'm using a combination of the Day Mist as a cut-in lotion and the Volume Mist to help with that kick that I want to create. So, for anyone that didn't see the beginning bit, we start off with a diagonal section. The reason that I'm creating I'm taking a diagonal section, but I'm cutting a square line, and that's normally, it goes against what I would normally do. Normally my section would have to mirror the line that I'm creating, but with this, I want the hair to kick, and that's a kind of I suppose a good lesson for anyone really, that understanding distribution of weight and understanding angles, if you don't cut a line, I find if you don't cut a line with the parallel section, then you can, very often you can get a kick and you can get a movement in the hair. And if you don't want it, if your client or you want to have a bob that sits very square and very neat, then that's not so good. But on something like this, it works great because me cutting on a slightly off angle compared to the line that I'm creating makes the hair kick at the front, which is exactly what I want. Okay, and then we're going to start to work the diagonal up into the fringe now. If I'm missing any questions, I'll make sure I get back on there and answer them. Okay, and I'm only working to the corner of the eye. I don't want the fringe to be wide. I want it all to look quite shallow, almost like it's almost like it's too enclosed around the face. Because I want this really heavy fringe and then this kick to sit right around onto the pointing at the lips. So I'm going to go through just to check on my other side so I know where I am. So it's just the corner of the eyebrow, and we're going to start to cut square. I'll spin around so people can see a little bit better. There's a question just come through. Can you talk about your fingers and do you overlap them? How do you get tension with your fingers? I'm putting quite a lot of tension on the razor section with my fingers because I want that to jump up and kick and react. I'm only using tension of the comb for the fringe because I want it to contract a little bit, but not so much. Spin it around here so I can show you the angle on the side. So you can see I'm putting quite a lot of tension on the razor because you see what happened when I had so much tension and it razored, it all wanted to kick forward, which is exactly what we want. So it's a good lesson because you can see what happens because you may not want it on some haircuts, and that shows that you don't want to put too much tension on, and you certainly don't want to work on a diagonal angle. Okay, so I'm coming through into the fringe again now. I'll spin around the angle slightly so you can see. So going underneath with my comb, with the scissors, pulling this around here, making sure I'm not going too wide with the fringe because that's not what I want to do. So again, putting the tension on, make sure I'm keeping that square line, and now I'm just going to check the balance on this side. So this side is still a touch longer on this line. Okay, so that last section drop. With the last section, the same with the other side, I'm just combing, there's no parting as such, so I'm just combing in the natural fall across the shape of the head. Okay. So tension on there, take that off. You can see how fast this haircut is. I'm going to just raise at the top section as well, so that I start to get a little bit of kick. I'm letting this fall from the parting, well, from the crown, as natural as possible over the fringe. You can see that fine tension on the comb just makes the fringe contract. That's just what I want. I want like a real bluntness, but then one that starts to move around. If I'm missing any questions, guys, I'll make sure that I get into the comment section at the end and get them all answered, no problem. Right, so now we've just got that really heavy fringe that's contracting loads. It's going to get all these little jumps through there. And this is, I suppose, the way that I would describe this style of cutting, or this combination cutting. It's kind of what I always aim to try and do is to, what can I say? It's almost like I want to do stronger, more conceptual haircuts, but to do them where they're cut to within an inch of their life, and I spending 4 hours on a line and making it look like the machines cut it. Yeah, that's great, but it ain't so relevant for what people are going to want walking in the salon and on the street. So this thing of almost like combination cutting, free cutting, whatever you want to call it, it's about, yeah, doing things that are still strong and still have a conceptual feel, but they need to have a place and a relevance in the salon world as well. And that's what all the work that I'm doing at the moment is going to be. So you can see essentially that's quite a strong thing, right? That fringe that's contracting nicely on its own. This is a real stepped bob haircut, and now we're going to go and put a totally disconnected line through here. So I'm going to go through, take a central parting through the back. I'm using the Day Mist as a cutting agent. Okay, I'm going to take a section straight down the centre of the head. I'm going to take a square line. Okay. So now we have the line nice and square through the back. Now what I'm doing, I've got to pick a line that's going to be separate from the length through the sides, but it shouldn't be, it still should have a flow to it. So if we look at where these sides are kicking through here, I want something that would just be, as that dries and it kicks, is sitting more just underneath the jawline. So we're going to drop about 1.5 inches from the hairline. Can you guys see that? And my razor is parallel, straight in there. And take that line out. Keeping it square, I'm not coming around the corner. If I weren't demonstrating, I'd be stood square right in front of it, so I'm pulling everything. So I've just got to make sure, even though I'm standing to the side, I'm not cutting to the side, I'm cutting still square through the back, because that's what's going to make the the really strong separation between the two lengths. Okay. So another square line. Make sure that's square. So for anyone that's just joined in, sorry to anyone that has been watching and I'm repeating myself, but for anyone that's just joined in, we're doing a haircut called 4 lines walk into a bob, and that's basically a bob shape haircut that is based around 4 disconnected lines being left to dry naturally. So on the face of it, very conceptual, very strong, but the way that we're going to do it and the way we're going to let it dry, it's going to have a real wearability to it as well. Okay, square razor, pull square through here. On the side. Now, as we get through to the second section, I'm just going to start to comb. You see, if I just pull into the profile and it starts to kick, that's what I'm looking for, because I want to see that separation. I've got that step here and that step here, and that's what I'm liking. So I'm going to do one section in profile so you guys can see it. What I've found that the key is to making haircuts like this still wearable and still relevant in the salon is doing them in a very natural way. And I don't mean natural as in undisciplined, but I mean understanding the rules of shape and cutting hair, but then not being too restricted with technique as well, because I think sometimes in the past when I've been a little bit too restricted with technique and I've demanded that the line that I did was perfect and it was really sharp and balanced and everything was within a millimetre perfect, and that haircut has its place. But what I found is the haircuts that I was doing then didn't feel so relevant, and certainly no clients that I had or that I know of would have wanted them. So what I'm working on at the moment is to find ways to, we've still got to have technique, of course, and we still want to do conceptual work. But if no one wants it, then what's the point in having conceptual work? And I think, I love doing photographs and I love doing photographic work that, you couldn't necessarily wear. But for people that I'm cutting on stage and for clients that are coming in the salon, I want to be doing strong work on them as well. And the only way I can do that is if I start to make this type of work wearable and have a relevance. Otherwise, I'm just doing it for a photograph, and that's fine, but it doesn't have so much of a shelf life. And it's quite a challenge as well, right? So you guys are all experienced hairdressers, or most of you, I'm assuming, that are watching this. It's almost easy to do something really abstract and unusual because there's no rules. But when you have this brief that, okay, if you're doing something, then your client needs to be able to wear it, or it's not for everyone, but some clients need to be able to wear it. How are you going to soften it? How are you going to make it relevant? Then that's a challenge, and I think it's quite an interesting challenge. Let's come around this side. I'm just making sure that crown is combed naturally. Square razor, square line. so you can see, yeah, better, making relevant to the client, not only to me. Exactly, that's the perfect, I'm going to steal that off you, Better Roberta, because that's the perfect way to describe it. Yes, it's all right for something to be relevant to me, but is it relevant on someone that is actually going to want to wear it? And while this is, you know, totally still quite a conceptual haircut, you know, you've got 1 line, 2 line, 3 line, 4 line, it's still got a certain kind of tactileness to it. It's still got a certain like cuteness, and that's what I like. And then we'll just show the same through this side. Okay, what I'm going to do before I finish off is I'm going to switch back to scissors now. The angle of the razor was square at the back, and for anyone asking about this razor was my mum's razor when she started hairdressing in the early 70s. It was in her first training kit when she was 15, 16, and when she retired from hairdressing she gave it to me, and I've been using it for about 15 years now. So I don't know the brand, but it's like feels like part of my hand, so it's a really nice one. What I'm going to do now is take a central section through here, and I'm going to just take the corner out of the top of the haircut, so just through the front though, so I'm not going to do it too round. So okay, so just coming up here, over directing. The reason I'm doing this, I'm going to over-direct everything to the middle. The reason I'm doing this is because I want to add some internal texture into here, but without spoiling this line. So that's the reason I'm over-directing, so that I continue to maintain a weight through the outline. So just over-direct everything through to the middle. That's not the middle. And eventually I'm going to run out of hair probably in the next section or so. Yeah, so I ran out of hair there. And I'll just show you before I cut the other side so you can see the difference. So this still has this cuteness here and this kick here, but on this side the fringe just has a little bit more to it, where here still feels a little bit flat, and it's just fine. It's just those small details that, again, you know, if this was a real client, that's the thing that she's going to notice in 5 weeks' time when it doesn't feel too heavy, because I've just knocked the corner out of the top. And the reason that I'm over directing it is because I don't want to start creating anything too short that needs connecting through to the back. Lifting up, over directing to the centre. So we're using the Volume Hair Mist from Davines. Yeah, Jackie, just a little bit more movement through that top now, through taking the corner out. And I'm always kind of, another thing that I always try and do is, I'm trying to anticipate, yeah, this is a mannequin, but I'm still trying to anticipate if this was a real client, what are the things that are going to have grown out in 4 or 5 weeks' time? And I felt like on this haircut, it would have been, say the client liked all these little flicks, that would have been probably too heavy and stopped flicking and started to get flat against the cheek. So me taking that top corner out is going to make sure that this is a real client. She's going to get, you know, 6, 7 weeks time, it's still going to be flicking because there's not going to be too much weight on there. The back, I'm not really going to start to lay because what I quite like is that this all has that texture and this is just really quite kind of heavy and just has a real heavy kick to it. And I feel like if I started to layer all the way through that, chance it could start to lose its graphicness, so I'm going to keep that quite heavy. I'm just going to spray a lot more of this volume mist through. Thank you to my colleague Brian for recommending me. I've been with Davines since November, and I used the products in my previous salon, but there's certain people like Brian that have been in Davines for over 20 years that he's always a good one to just sense check your product choice with and make sure that you're on the right angle. So this is the haircut. We're going in profile here. We have the step. So we got 4 lines walk into a bob. You got 1, you got 2, you got 3 and 4 all the way through. And I'm going to put her in the garden. I'm going to let her dry for a couple of hours and then I'm going to post the finished result in the comments section. So thank you very much. I'll be here next Monday night at the same time where we have a cut called the Plaque Cut, which isn't salon relevant at all, but it's something that I did on my very first photography collection, and I'm going to do it in a little bit more of a softer, more updated way. So stay cool, keep out of trouble, and I'll see everyone next Monday. Thank you very much.